of the Israeli military operation in Jenin in Palestine is its biggest raid in the area in 20 years. Let's talk about what's been happening there. Omar Shakir is with Human Rights Watch. Omar, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So let's talk then about the developments of the past week or so and this subsequent call for the International Criminal Court to investigate what has been happening.
Absolutely. I mean, this latest event in Jenin has resulted in the killing of 12 Palestinians. It has involved attacks that cut electricity and water access to thousands of Palestinians in the Jenin refugee camp. More than 3,500 Palestinians were displaced from their homes. We know that hospitals were struck by tear gas canisters, that ambulances were obstructed from treating the sick, and this comes against the context in which we're seeing an unprecedented number of Palestinians being killed by Israeli forces in the West Bank over the last 18 months or so, and of course this comes in the 57th year of an occupation. Palestinians live under apartheid, which is a crime against humanity, and the larger context of daily structural violence and repression sometimes leads to these kinds of raids, but this has been happening consistently for not days, for not weeks, for not months, for not years, but for decades.
And precisely because it has been taking place for so long, Omar, and my question is not to suggest that there should never be a time where the intervention of the ICC is called on, but what makes this particular time different to what the situation has been and perhaps to even the previous attacks that may have derailed things at the Jenin refugee camp?
I think what makes it different is the unprecedented nature of the scale of killings. Certainly we know killings have been ongoing, but they've reached in the West Bank a new level of intensity. We also see that we're at about a 2-decade high in the number of Palestinians held in administrative detention without trial or charge. There have been efforts to criminalize. They have in fact been criminalized, major Palestinian human rights organizations, and all of these issues directly stem from impunity, from the fact that these attacks happen. They've happened historically. Nobody is held to account. They're whitewashed, and they happen again. And we've seen in the ICC and other contexts when the previous prosecutor issued warnings about the demolitions of entire Palestinian villages, there have been statements from Israeli government officials about the role that had in deterring them from carrying out those demolitions. So we know that the court, even when accountability is elusive, can play a role as a deterrent. We have a new Israeli government. It's been in power for more than 6 months, and it's been very clear about its intent. Its policy is maintaining Jewish supremacy, maintaining apartheid, doubling down on unlawful policies like settlements. That's all right in front of us, and there is no answer to that, and they're not even hiding behind pretext. So there needs to be an urgent international intervention, and the court, this is really a test of its own legitimacy and the legitimacy of the international legal order. Can it meet the challenge posed by Palestine, or will international justice continue to suffer from double standards where different victims, depending on where they're from, have different access to justice?
Omar, the reality that we're dealing with the ICC is that regardless even of some of the damning findings that they've made against other governments, of course, that have been accused, whether it's human rights abuses, you name it, it hasn't necessarily resulted in better outcomes for accountability and even holding those individuals that are behind those crimes accountable. So beyond the ICC then, is there another avenue, is there another pathway that you believe can be explored in this moment, given the fact that we're talking about an ICC that by and large has been very much struggling with questions of legitimacy?
Look, I mean, victims of serious rights abuse in Israel-Palestine have faced a wall of impunity for decades, and the ICC is one of the few addresses where they can go to have those grievances heard. So yes, the ICC has faced challenges, but it is a critical institution of last resort. That remains a central avenue. But you're right, Kathy, that's not the only one that's out there. The International Court of Justice currently has an advisory opinion that the UN requested regarding the long-term consequences of Israel's occupation. We hope that states like South Africa, but others across the world will make submissions that are quite strong to that court, highlighting the abuses, including apartheid. There's a commission of inquiry the UN established recently that's looking into abuses on both sides of the Green Line. The mandate of that commission has come under attack in recent weeks at the Human Rights Council in Geneva. Its mandate is important, and of course there are other mechanisms at CERD, the Committee for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination at the UN, and then obviously states like South Africa, but around the world, can take strong action to, including prosecutions in their own countries under the doctrine of universal jurisdiction. South Africa should ratify the Apartheid Convention from the 1970s, but there's also steps to end complicity in serious abuses.
Omar Shakir, we'll leave it there for tonight.